You ever look back at your first year in student ministry and think, what was I doing? Trying to change the world while accidentally offending the custodian, ignoring your volunteers, or forgetting to sleep? Same here. Today, we're talking about what we wish we knew in year one. And trust me, you're going to get it.
I believe that we stand on the verge of a historic moment.
You ask them what it is about rock and roll music that they like, and the first thing they'll say is the beat, the beat, the beat.
I found pardon for my past, power for the present, bright prospect for the future.
If you talk to the average teenager of today, I know what it does to you.
That could have an unparalleled and unprecedented impact.
I've got a story to tell. Have you?
Well, welcome back to the Shaping Student Ministry podcast. I'm your host, John Oliver, and this is the one about what I wish I knew in year one. Now, usually Ian's here with me, but this week he's in Dallas holding down our booth at the Southern Baptist Convention, probably right now talking someone's ear off on his cow rug about the podcast and giving away some free statehood hats. But I've got a solid co-host today, my friend, our friend, your friend, Mark Santana from First Baptist Statesboro. Mark's been in the trenches of student ministry, and we're pulling back the curtain on all the rookie mistakes we've made and the grace we've found along the way. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing good. I think that this is a topic that everybody, even if you're brand new, you've probably already got some stories. What do you think about when you think about year one?
I think about the fact that I'm glad that people have grace and there's a honeymoon period. And, I've had several year ones and some I didn't make a year. So definitely got some stories I could tell, some mistakes that I've made along the way.
When you talk about, I totally understand the honeymoon period, but what would you say, how would you explain to somebody kind of what that honeymoon period is, the benefits it gives you, and then when you kind of realize honeymoon's over?
So really it's maybe the first 12 to 16 or 18 months or whatever. Everyone's excited that you're there. They're typically fed up with the guy that was there before you, so they give you a little more leeway, and they tend to buy in a little easier to what you're doing as long as you're pretty well organized. And they're excited about what could potentially happen with the student ministry or just the ministry in general. And so you've got a lot more support, you've got a lot more excitement. People are enthusiastic about what's going on, but as everything goes on, people get used to it, and it kind of loses its shine a little bit if you don't continually make adjustments or tweak things to make sure they're working effectively. And then people start to call you out on things that may or may not be going well. And it's not as supportive as it was before.
Yeah. I think the thing that's interesting kind of in the walking into, because I've been in 3 churches now. My first church I started at when I was 20, and I think, what in the world were they thinking hiring me?
Mm-hmm.
Because there was I don't really know that there was even really a honeymoon period there, because it was really kind of a bad spot when I took over. There was a lot of hurt feelings, and I was also they were kind of promised that they were going to get this great student pastor, and then they got the 20-year-old kid because they couldn't find anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
My second church, there was definitely a honeymoon period, and then there was very clearly a time when that was over. But as far as the thing that's been interesting to me, and especially I think I noticed it more coming in here, which actually, so this podcast will release June 11th, and June 11th, 7 years ago, is when I started at my church now, Rosemont.
Oh, nice.
And but I can remember that first year here, there were a lot of changes people wanted to make, because like you talked about, there's things that they're tired of with the former guy,
mm-hmm.
or they didn't agree with the way he did things. And then you kind of come in, you've got your own brand, and you want to make sure that you're honoring the former guy because they did a lot of good work, regardless of if people liked him or not. The guy that I came in for here, I would contend he's still in the area. I would contend he's the best Bible teacher in this area.
Mm-hmm.
He's now a senior pastor at a church plant, but I would contend he's the best Bible teacher in the church area. So when I got here, my kids were well versed biblically. There was solid foundation. I got to come in teaching things year one that I typically wouldn't have taught until year 4,
mm-hmm.
because of how solid he had done. The shortfalls and the pitfalls for him were really more connecting with kids and relationship. And so that's where a lot of the opinions from people came from. But maybe you can speak to this. I think that the thing that's interesting to me is there are personalities that you come in contact with at your church that do you find that you have to be aware that there are some people that just want control? There are some people that just want their opinions heard, and there's some people that just need to feel seen, like just need to know somebody cares. How do you differentiate between the person who's trying to run the show and the person who just is trying to feel seen?
I've run into that at several different churches, and what I try to do is almost give everybody themselves a honeymoon period whenever I step in, because you have people that have good relationships with the previous guy, and so you're trying to figure out who they are, if they're beneficial to the student ministry, if they're going to cause problems, and that really does take some time. Most people are not going to play their hand right when you get there, unless they're just narcissistic. I mean, if we're being honest. So I try to give them a period of time just to fill them out, figure out who they are, see how they teach, see how students respond to them, and really assess the amount of value that they bring to the student ministry. And then as that goes on, really start implementing kind of what my standard for student ministry is, the things that we're willing to let go and not let go, the things we need to confront, the things we need to encourage. And even here, that I've had a couple that I've had to kind of have a face-to-face or one-on-one conversation and explain to them that that's not how we're going to do things. And whether it was how they did it prior to or not, that's just not how we're going to run the student ministry, because it's not helping students. It's more about them and pushing a particular narrative than it is about actually glorifying God and bringing students along in their faith. But most of the ones here that I've had have been phenomenal, and it's been some of the best leaders I've had. But I've had a couple that have been more of a headache than a help, and I've had to address that. And I mean, it's like that with every church. They get comfortable with what the previous guy did, or in my case, I mean, the previous guy passed away, and so we had like a 1.5 to 2 year gap to where people were filling in and just trying to keep things going. And so there was a little bit of a power struggle, and there was not a lot of communication. So people were kind of doing whatever they felt like they needed to do. For the ones that felt like they were in control, it was almost like a judge's situation, to where they did what they thought was right in their own eyes. And so me coming in to where I try to be graceful, but I also understand where we need to go. We butted heads pretty quickly, and I still gave them some time to right the ship or correct things so that we could be on the same page, because there is some value in having people that are not going to agree with everything you have to say. But if it becomes to where it's detrimental and it's not for the benefit of the student ministry, but just because they want to have some modicum of control, that's when it becomes a problem. Really, it takes about a year or so to figure that out. And that's if you're being observant and if you really do care. Because there are some people I've seen that they've been student ministers in churches and they complain about leaders, but they never actually address the problem. And I've just learned a long time ago that there are some churches that think that they can have the option to walk all over pastors and student ministers, but I'm not somebody's footstool. So
yeah. Well, and I think that's a good point. I think that when this is something I was told recently by a guy, actually, Bill Pope's his name, and he talked about, when you talk to the search committee, you're talking to, so the people that hire you, you're talking to 1% or 5% of the church as a whole. And those people are the ones that, like, there's pretty strong agreement. Like, when you walk in, you implement your changes, you do the things you talked about, and they're behind you every step of the way. But then you've also got to have the wherewithal and the wisdom to say, okay, well, there are some people. And in your situation specifically, I mean, the guy before you died. And so that is an incredibly challenging thing to step into, where you had people leading because they were trying to hold it together for everybody, and they were trying to do those things. But you get there, and like you said, like, you're the leader, you've got things you've got to do. And I think I thought, kind of coming in everywhere I've gone, like, at first, being a visionary leader means that by week 3, I'm going to have 5 big initiatives that we're going to do, and we're going to fix things. But what I'm hearing you say, and what I've learned along the way, is, a lot of what you're doing is like, hey, yeah, this is the direction I want to go, but I also need to be very attentive to the way things have been done. The people that have been leading, set some parameters and some expectations, and say, hey, there's a pastor side of this that you've got to do, which I know from our experience, or my experience talking with you, like, there's very clearly you've had the visionary piece of it in your head, but you've also pastored people to that point. to say like, hey, here's where we're going and I want you to come with us.
Mhm.
But then at some point, like you're either going to be on board or you're not.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone maybe right now who they're in year one or they're stepping into a situation and they're trying to fix everything right away?
The biggest things I can tell from example is you can't fix everything right away. It takes time. We've got some things that I was able to fix within the first couple of months, but then there's things that we're still working through because you have to take into account the culture of the church, how long the previous guy had been there, the type of relationship he had with the leaders and with the students. Did he disciple the leaders? Did he set an expectation for what they were going to do as leaders? And did he have a clear direction? So I've always had a philosophy, and I've been in ministry for about 20 years now, that I'm not going to go in and start like setting dynamite and blowing things up. So I look at the calendar, I look at how they run things. If it runs well, we're going to continue doing it. If it doesn't run well, we're going to tweak it and try it again. And if it still doesn't work, then that's when we're going to get rid of it. But I also tell people we don't have any golden calves. So we're going to go in the direction that we feel like God is leading us. And I know the biggest advantage I've had here is that I started doing monthly meetings with our leadership team. And we have about 25 to 30 adult leaders. And so once a month we sit down, we read a book together. We discuss the ministry. We talk about things that are working, things that are not working, how we can grow. And I posed a question to them last week that we're going to talk about in August. And the question is this as good as it gets? And if not, how do we get better? Because we've always got to be pushing forward to make sure that what we're doing is going to reach students. And if it doesn't reach students, then we're not fulfilling our purpose. And so as a student minister, our responsibility is first of all, really is to our leaders. And if we're not training our leaders, then we're failing them. And by failing them, we're failing our students. Because that, and like the biggest thing that I see, like I've been going for my previous church for about a year and a half now. I've been at First Baptist. And when I left that church, the student ministry continued to thrive. It continued to do well and continued to succeed until the new guy got there. And that to me is a hallmark of leaving a healthy ministry and leading one. And if you step into a church with the idea that you've got to make sure the ministry continues, even if you're not there, then I think it changes your perspective and changes how you handle people and how you address things and how you cast that vision. Because it's not my ministry, it's God's, and I'm a temporary steward. And so I'm here as long as he has me here, but someday he's going to call me somewhere else. And if this ministry dies when I do, then it was never God's ministry, it was mine.
So, yeah, I agree with everything you just said. Maybe you're different than me. It took me a little while to figure out that my ministry was really more about ministering to the volunteers as we ministered to students.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that right away? Like year one, you're like, man, I got to love on these volunteers and I got to teach these volunteers so that we can advance? Or like, at what point do you think it shifted for you where you were like, man, they're really my primary?
It probably took me about 15 years.
Yeah.
Because the first ministry that I was at, when I didn't grow up in church, so I started going when I was a teenager. And the youth pastor that I had, like, he never had volunteers. He always did everything himself. So I thought that, going into my first position, I was supposed to be the Lone Ranger. And I didn't have anybody mentoring me and telling me what ministry was supposed to look like. Had I had that, I wouldn't have made so many stupid mistakes. So maybe that's something we need to encourage as well. Be part of a mentorship program. If you're stepping into ministry, if you feel called into ministry, because it'll save you a lot of heartache and pain. But the first church I went to, I lasted for about 5 months. And it was a smaller church, maybe 90 to 100 people total. We had maybe 12 to 13 students in the student ministry. And there were volunteers that wanted to help, but because I didn't know how to use volunteers or how to even ask for help, I failed. And those volunteers kind of stepped away until I left, and then they started back. And then kind of ran into somewhat of the same situation the second church I was at. And then finally it clicked that I need to make sure that I'm getting input from those people that have been here, because when I leave, they're still going to be here. So you've got to have buy-in from those people, and you've got to respect them and appreciate them. So like now, after being in ministry for almost 20 years, I constantly ask our leaders, do you feel appreciated? What can I do better to make sure that you feel like you're doing something that's worthwhile? And and I tell them too, I don't make decisions in a vacuum unless it's something that I have to make right now. So I try to be very democratic and allow us to have kind of an open table discussion about the decisions that we're going to make. Because again, it's just as much their ministry. I mean, their kids are in the student ministry or they're taking time and volunteering. They're not getting paid to where I am. So I think it's more important to make sure that they're where they need to be than, my paycheck or anything else. And so making sure they feel appreciated, making sure that they're equipped well, and that they feel like they have some ownership in the student ministry. So one of the things that I've learned to do, since year 15 is to delegate. I can't do everything myself. And so I find people who have strengths to where I have weaknesses. And if I know that they enjoy doing those things, I give that to them. So like I can't decorate to save my life. I remember when I was in college, we had a ping pong table and I slept on an inflatable mattress. We had nothing on the walls. We had hand-me-down furniture. If it was not for my wife, I wouldn't have a single picture up in my house. So there's some ladies in our church that love doing decorating. So every time we have an event, I call on them like, hey, here's the budget. Y'all decorate, do whatever you need to do. I've got somebody
Yep.
that loves doing logistics. I hate logistics. So if I've got to do a spreadsheet, I'm like, hey, here's a spreadsheet. If you'll get this organized for me, that will be fantastic. And it gives me the opportunity to focus on students. It gives me the opportunity to help to like let people operate in their strengths. And then I also ask them, what's something that you would never want to do? And then kind of push them and challenge them to get out of their comfort zone to do those types of things as well. But it's
Yeah.
definitely, it's not a my ministry mindset. And it took me a long time to learn that.
What do you think maybe the biggest mistake youth pastors make in year one with leaders is?
I think it's a humility issue. We go in thinking, I got the job. That means I was the best candidate. That means I know what I'm doing and I don't need to listen to you.
Yeah.
And it takes time to learn that you're probably not the smartest guy in the room. And if you are, you need to find better people.
Yeah. Yeah. If you are my dad has always told me, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you need to go to another room. And, I think what you said, one of the things that I heard you say just then was, or a little earlier, was these people are going to be here after I'm gone. I think the biggest mistake a lot of guys make their first year is not understanding these people were here before me. And so it's true on the back end. Like, yeah, you want to leave your leaders in a really good place, but it's also true that a lot of times your leaders were in place before you got there. And so I think of like my first year here, really my first 6 months here at Rosemont. The guy that was here before me, again, great teacher, unbelievable teacher, did things a lot differently than I do. And that's okay. But there were some leaders that were sold out to do things his way and had so like hook, line, sinker, caught the vision, just were convinced like there's not another way to do this. It's only ever going to be the way that he did it. And so having to tell them like, hey, look, this is going to look different. And I just need you to commit for me for a year that you can just hang in there and do it this way. And I had some people that messaged me back, or because there were some people, believe it or not, that I couldn't even get to meet with me. I had to, they wouldn't answer the phone call. They wouldn't answer. They just wouldn't talk to me. Wouldn't talk to me at church, wouldn't answer the phone, which part of me is like, I really just need to. My gut response was, if I can't get you to look at me, meet with me, or answer my phone, I just want to fire you. But the deal is like that person is dealing with some hurt because they've lost their friend. They've lost their confidant. They've lost their pastor and their mentor. And so sometimes people react poorly when they've gone through a traumatic departure, which his was, and trying to help them understand. And finally just pursuing them to a point to say, hey, look, I so appreciate the work you've done. This is the direction that we're going to try to go. And if you can't commit to that, that's okay. We're going to make a shift. It was almost like, too, like coming out of COVID, it was like starting over with new volunteers.
Yeah.
And so at that point, we were already kind of hemorrhaging people. And so we just asked all of our leaders, like, hey, what is the thing that you're really passionate about doing? Is it Sundays? Is it Wednesdays? And we got them to kind of force rank what they're more passionate about doing. And then we just let them go from the other. So, hey, we only want you to do what you're most passionate about doing. And it really it kind of hamstrung us for the first year, but it ended up tripling our volunteers after 2 years, not doubling them, tripling them. I mean, we were barely getting by with 15, 18 volunteers to we're running 52 volunteers on a weekly basis because we just asked them like, hey, what are you most passionate about? And it has made that much of a difference, which is a huge thing. All right. Kind of want to shift here to ask, one of the things that is inevitable for people kind of starting out is you can get in there, and if you don't have the right guardrails, you can run too fast, too quick. Did you ever have a moment kind of thinking through burnout? And I know it's like what I wish I knew in year one. So there's probably some people that are in ministries right now, and they've kind of found themselves in a place where they're running too fast. They're running too hard. When did you realize, have you ever been in a situation where you've realized, man, I got to slow it down a little bit? my marriage is suffering. I'm struggling to like, what, if you've had those moments, what were your triggers? Like what were your clues? Like, hey, I need to slow down. And then how did you do it?
Yeah, especially in year one, you're enthusiastic. You want to be at everything for every student, and you try to do that and you get burned out because you can't, especially when you have a wife and you have kids. I feel like a single guy is probably easier for, but even still, you can end up getting burned out. And then you set the expectation for the future that you're going to be at every single event that any student ever has, which really honestly sets yourself up for failure. And I'm thankful that my wife is willing to tell me whenever I'm doing too much, and she'll tell me you need to dial it back. And our church is like, our pastors are willing to say the same thing. Like you need to take a day off. And so sometimes my day off is on Friday, but sometimes I'll come up here because my wife is working. My kids are typically in school, and I come up here and just catch up on some things. And my boss was like, you need to go home. You need to take a day of rest. And it's, you want to be able to do everything, but you physically can't. And so you have to understand that there's a reason why there's multiple volunteers in the student ministry. Encourage them to go and start to games. And one of the things that I implemented probably 5 or 6 years ago, it was like year 2, year 3, when I was in my previous church, I started telling students, if you want me to come to something, I will try to come to one event that you have, but you have to let me know which event you want me to come to. So because I can't come to everything, but I will promise to come to at least one. And then the students that wanted me to come, they would tell me, and the ones that didn't, I really wasn't going to go because they're not making the effort to say, hey, I would like for you to come to this event.
Yep.
And that's probably unorthodox. And, in ministry, we want to make everybody happy and we want to please people. But if, like, we're supposed to value their time, but they've got to value our time as well.
Yeah. I think that's wise. And I do the same thing. I tell them, like, hey, if you want me to come, I need you to invite me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to invite me, like, I need you to give me a schedule.
Yep.
Like I go to one of my nephew's t-ball games or one of my nephew's baseball games every year. Not because I don't want to see them play all the time. Of course, I would love to see them play more. But we've got so many people we're saying yes to. But part of the reason I'm able to say yes to my nephews is because we have their schedules, and we kind of schedule that and plan that. And so I think it is fair to ask people to help honor our time by making sure that we get the information we need to put it on our calendars so that we can first honor our family's time. All right. Well, we're going to take a break here on the first half of the podcast. Conversation is good so far. I'm excited about second half of the podcast. We're going to get a little bit more practical, a little bit more behind the wall, and it'll be really good. So, hey, we want to see you back behind the wall. You do that by going to just click the link below in the bio. It's $27 a month. You get access to games through Games Do Games. You get access to curriculum, years worth of curriculum, and coming really soon in a couple weeks, you're going to hear about a really big partnership between SSM and another youth ministry organization that's going to be really, really cool. So we want you to be a part of that stuff. Jump in, be a part of the community on the brand new lobby, which is all going to be available just on the SSM website. So really exciting that we're migrating to that, and hope to have you there. So we'll see you behind the wall.